Kia ora tātou, nau mai, haere mai. A warm welcome to everybody for our extraordinary council meeting of Wednesday the 27th of September 2023. Before we start proceedings, could I invite Councillor Fitzgerald to open our meeting with karakia. Councillor.
Tēnā koe, Mr Mayor, tēnā tātou e te whare. Kia karakia tātou. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tāki. Mr Mayor, thank you.
Kia ora, thanks, Councillor. Well, welcome to everybody. And look, the meeting is being recorded, is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Just in terms of health and safety, because we have a number of residents and external people in the chamber, that on our fire exits are clearly marked with the green running men or women, and we will evacuate to, in the unlikely event of an emergency, evacuate to the assembly area, the clock tower and Te Maraohine, directly outside here on the square. The building is a non-smoking facility. Defibrillator is located in the entranceway of our downstairs on the ground floor, and any incidences, please report them to our committee administration team. Officers, if you, just because of the online component, if you could just, your name and title the first time that you speak will be appreciated. And councillors online, Councillor Finlay and Councillor Dennison. So we'll go to our first order of business. Oh, sorry, Councillor Meehan and Councillor Dennison. So we'll go to our first order of business there is, or sorry, second is around apologies, and there's a recommendation that the Council receives the apology from Councillor Lou Finlay. I'm happy to move that. Second by Deputy Mayor. There being no commentary, we will vote please on that. And that is passed with 10 votes for and none against. Thank you. Moving through notification of additional items, there is none. Declarations of interest, if any. I haven't received anything from anybody. Thank you. Right, public comment. And we do have public comment. And I'd like to now invite Brian Holmes. Brian, if you'd like to come up to the main table there. Brian's going to speak on two separate issues, as an owner in Featherston Street and then again as another lessee in Summerhill Drive.
Right, I'm live.
We're trying to just get... You're on, great. You're on now. All yours, Brian.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'm here under a bit of a shock. I've been party to I've been to every workshop you've put on. I've missed this last meeting because I was sick, but I wrote a letter to all of you. I thank the 3 only that turned up to see me and replied, not the 15. I was only informed of this meeting last night. So at 6 o'clock last night, thankfully, Grant texted me to say, did you know there's a meeting about the cycleways outside your businesses? I said, no. So consultation has fallen over badly from the council, and I will explain where and why. And I just think there's more to this meeting than you didn't want anybody else from the community here, obviously. I've got 2 other business owners down the street who this morning are totally pissed off with you guys. When was the consultation? They want to be the 2 behind me, and there's probably going to be some behind that. So you've got 1 owner from an affected business. I mean, you should have 20. Because your process has fallen over and no one knew about this meeting. Now, is it up to us to go to your website daily to see what's going on? Up to now, you've all come, and those who visited me, great, they've been good, got a free cup of coffee, had a chat. But obviously the coffee's no good because the chat's run out. And all I've got since your last meeting are 2 letters. The first letter came the day after your meeting saying that you've passed something. Wasn't quite sure what it was because I watched that whole meeting online, and I'm surprised that you don't actually critique what you read more. There's a lot of learning to be done in you guys. When do you get data that's 10 years averages? I don't run my business on a 10-year average. Businesses change weekly and daily, but you take 10-year averages to make a decision. But anyway, in this letter, go back to this. You had some pushback on the right-hand turn. I've got two businesses. I'm going to talk about Featherston Street because that's my biggest bugbear at the moment. Somehill, I'll just mention at the end, that's kind of on the improve. So you had an issue with the right-hand turn. I went to the co-design workshops, and the biggest issue everyone put their hand up about was the most unsafest thing in this whole street was the right-hand turn into McDonald's and Countdown. Yet on day one, after you approved it, you rolled over and you said these businesses shared their concerns with council about the potential impact on the barrier of their business. You committed to work closely with them to find another option because this right-hand turn would affect their business. So that was great. You rolled over, two big guys got you. So now you've got 20 little guys down the street. We've been there a lot longer. We employ just as many, and now you don't really care you take our parks away. So here we are, and you said in the same letter, over the coming weeks we'll share information with the community about these changes. So I thought that's good, you're going to come and see me again. A letter on the 14th of August. So nothing, that's the 29th of June. 14th of August, heard nothing. We knew you were doing some testing. So you come with a letter saying we're going to put some boxes across the road so McDonald's can drive in, so they're not affected, that's great. We're going to merge two traffic lanes and do some testing. That was cool. So those other owners want to be here to show you how poor that testing went. I don't know what this meeting's about, I had no minutes. I just snuck on the internet this morning and read that you did the testing and it went perfectly well according to the consultants. Well, I can tell you it didn't, and you can probably believe them or me, whatever you like. What about removing the parks testing? What about taking out the medium strip? They are the two key factors in this whole program, and you didn't even test those. So if you want to talk about safety, because safety seemed to be the prime concern at the last meeting, you want to save lives. That's very good. I'm very pleased you want to do that. But what about saving businesses and people's livelihoods? You've got not one risk management done here. There's no costings. You're going to prove something you don't even know how it's going to cost. I feel all you're going to do today is approve it quickly so you get Waka Kotahi money. Is that the driver, how you run the city? If someone gives you some money, that's the decision you make it on. Look, I went back in Summerhill Day Drive. I've offered you $5,000 for a car park in front of my business, the key car park, and you turned it down because you didn't want it. So obviously my money's not good enough to put a car park on your road in front of my business. So this is what's happening. So now I lose parks. I've done my risk analysis, and this is what it is. I will lose $250,000 worth of turnover in the first year. That will mean 2.5 staff will be made redundant. I'm asking you guys, who out here has got the balls to come and tell my staff that? Will you 3 councillors come back and select who they are? Or will the 14 of you or 15 come and say, sorry, you lose your job? Now, why are we losing the job? This is a dry job, isn't it? Hang on. Why are they losing the job? Because we have, 15 cyclists a day go past. What happens in the last week? We haven't had any cyclists. It's been too wet and cold. They've either driven their cars or gone in an Uber. So what have you achieved there? Absolutely zero. Now, we had a whole meeting and cyclists came along, that's good. The non-cyclists, we gave up at that meeting because the second meeting we went to on your co-design, the plan was shown to us. We had told you the safest thing, the most unsafest thing is the right-hand turn. By the second meeting, you had a plan. I don't know what to do next. I'm at loggerheads. I seem to have done more work than you.
So Brian, just quickly wrap up on Summerhill.
Yes, so Summerhill. So anyway, look, I just want to say, if even 100 people that voted for you, I voted for quite a few of your faces. Of those people that voted for you, the 100, 99.5 drive a car every day, 0.5 bike. So if you want to stay for your next round, just think about who voted for you. Okay, Summerhill. 4 years that's been going on, and I've been fighting this for 4 years. the first meeting we had up there, the most unsafest thing is the speed of the traffic. The first meeting when the council staff presented to you guys, they said speed is off the agenda, wasn't in the scope of this project. I don't know why, because they then told me later on, it's a lot of admin to do a speed reduction. So it's cheaper to spend 600,000 on 600 metres of cycleway than do something at a desk and get the speed reduced. So now we've still got 60k an hour and we're putting in cycleways to make it safe. You won't save any lives, I'm afraid. So you've actually come back with a plan. 3 years later, funnily enough, I got told that first bunch were pretty damn useless and they couldn't design anything. The second bunch now have drawn a design where the cycleway goes into the footpath and no parks are lost. Lo and behold, I think we got told this 4 years ago. So here we are at Featherston Street, one plan, one design, get rid of the car parks, stuff up my business. Here we are at Summerhill Drive, let's go back and think about it. Poor souls like me have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then finally you find up a plan that can keep the car parks. My God, the lights have come on. So now we're losing a couple of trees and I don't lose my parks. But I just question the people who approved that 4 years ago, some of you may have been on the council then, appalling job. You got a report in front of you, no one critiqued it, everyone believed, now this is what you believed, that if you lose parks in front of a business, that other people will come on other modes of transport to your business. So the guy in the landscape yard expected somebody on a bike to take away 2 cubic of metal, and I expected somebody on a bus to come up, buy a coffee, wait 4 hours for a bus back. Honestly, you guys, if you push this through today, I think you're trying to pull the wool over our eyes and doing it very sneakily. There's no other members here to speak. Appalling job.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for your commentary. It is noted and appreciated.
Yeah, 3 months is pretty hard to save a
Yeah,
business.
no, I appreciate that, and
When you guys have had months and years
Yeah.
to wreck it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. All right, we'll now go, yeah. All right, so we've got public comment there, and that we received that for information. I'm happy to move it, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. We'll look to vote, please. And that has passed 15 votes for and none against. Thank you. All right. We'll now move to number 6, which is the report around the Featherston Street cycleway update. And I invite, who we got today? Bryce. Bryce is acting in this role around transport. And Michael Bridge, please. Our active transport manager. Gentlemen. Page 7 of your papers, councillors.
Kia ora, councillors. In the main, happy to take this report as read, given we did a workshop a week or so ago that first sort of presented the designs. That being said, there has been a couple of minor movements and continued conversations with a few parties on the street, and I might just pass over to Michael to give a brief highlight of what those changes were from, or developments, I suppose, were from where we were at in the workshop.
Good afternoon, it's Michael Bridge, Service Manager for Active Transport. So since we last briefed Council on the 13th of September, we've continued to do some work with some of the businesses on Featherston, and we've made also some design changes. So in terms of, I guess, 3 of the particular locations of interest to the businesses, the most westerly at Merlin's Dairy, where they currently have 2 car parks, and the new design also provides two car parks, but didn't allow for provision for loading and unloading. So since we last briefed council, we've moved one of the bus stops to the next block over, which has freed up some more space in front of Merlin's Dairy. So we have some additional parking in there, and that shows up on the plans that were published on Friday, which is the key change. The other area that on the 28th of June that we had talked about, the 13th of September that we talked about, we were looking at options there was around Annie's Takeaway. There haven't been any further changes to that particular block. So the off-street car parking and the on-street arrangements on the side street, that remains unchanged. The third area that we were looking very closely at is in and around Central Normal School with the pedestrian crossing there that currently exists and how it's going to be augmented. And we were looking most closely at provision for the piano services to be able to load and unload pianos. So a lot of conversations and options have been looked at there, and we have come to an arrangement with that particular business that will allow him to pull up in his trailer and load and unload pianos. That doesn't materially affect the designs, but it's just really an operational approach that we're taking. So we've resolved that. In terms of more broadly across the designs since the 13th September, there's probably three key changes, and there's been some evolution even since the designs were published on Friday. And those three are that the gap between the cycleway separator is going to be slightly different. It's going to be a consistent 2 metres. The designs that you have, it's variable, but we've changed that so it's a consistent 2 metres. In terms of all the pedestrian crossings, they're now going to be dual crossings, which makes provision for both pedestrians and cyclists to cross the road. And the third is what we call advanced stop boxes at the signalised intersections, where currently on the designs it shows that there's a uniform line straight across the road where a stationary bike rider and a stationary motorist would be in line. So we're just readjusting that so when they're stationary, the bike rider would be in front of the bonnet of the motor vehicle. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same. So those are the key changes, and I think we can take questions.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Michael. I've got a couple to start with before I go to my colleagues. Pascal Street, I'm just looking at the design, and Pascal Street has lost, currently there's a turning bay into that, and I see we've lost that coming from Botanical Road end. Bearing in mind, I wouldn't normally worry about it because it's one of many streets there, but it's obviously an arterial route for Arena. Reasons, was that taken into consideration?
So the key change that we've made around Pascal Street is obviously the addition of the pedestrian crossing. Were you asking Mr. Mayor about the changes to the parking or the changes to
I'm asking why you've deleted a turning bay.
Into Pascal Street? Yeah. So it is to allow for that pedestrian crossing.
Okay, and is there a reason why, and I've seen, there's other examples of where you've allowed turning bays into Wood Street, for instance. So is there a reason why is there some science behind the position of the crossing? Because that's obviously had an effect on why you've done what you've done.
Yeah, I guess the principle that we started with was through the co-design process was members of the public indicating where they would like the pedestrian crossings to be, the additional pedestrian crossings, and this is one location that was prioritised of the multiple provided, and that was to enable easier pedestrian access from residents to cross onto that side, but also in respect of the arena for those when there are events and there are people parking on the side streets on the northern side of Featherston Street, that they would also be able to cross and access the arena.
Okay, good, thank you. Just bearing in mind the outburst we've had in public comment, have we engaged with Mr Holmes from Ebony Coffee? Because he's adamant that he hasn't seen you.
We have spoken with Mr Holmes and the other businesses, well, every single business along Featherston Street. We have focused our engagement with the businesses that are most affected by the changes, particularly those that relate to parking or a bus stop or a pedestrian crossing. So it is true that we have not communicated with Mr Holmes as often as other businesses, and an example would be Piano Services a few doors down, where we've had a number of conversations and sought to achieve a resolution. And that's largely because for Ebony Coffee, there hasn't been any change to the parking arrangements since the concept design was actually presented at the co-design process where he was participating, and so there hasn't been any change since then.
Okay, no, that's good. And just so you have been in touch with the Piano Service outfit. Sorry to go through the detail, but we just need to do this because it's important. The chiropractic clinic, who again gave us an opportunity to put a petition to us. Yes. Have we spoken to them?
So in terms of Whitehead Chiropractic, yes, we have had conversations, and they're happy with the arrangements that we've arrived at, where we've provided on-street parking and looking at some changes to side streets parking. So the information that was presented, the material that was presented on Friday, includes shows some provision on Mary Mary and the adjacent crescent, where we're looking at providing some additional parking changes on those side streets to facilitate patients who might be turning up or being dropped off at Whitehead Chiropractic.
Okay, good. And Troy Howard's car yard, which is opposite Palmerston North Boys High College House, have we spoken to him?
Perhaps we might hand over to Olivia, given the line of questioning is focused, probably rightfully so, around engagement and consultation. So we might hand over to Olivia to be able to answer these and maybe even provide a broader overview of what's been done.
Thank you.
Olivia Wicks, Communications Manager. I guess just to really explain is, I guess one of the key things with this engagement in the last 3 weeks has been the design we've been getting progressively, and so we've prioritised the engagement with the businesses where there is going to be a rather big change. And so just a quick idea of what those are for your guys' context is the Takaro Sports Club, Merlin's Dairy, Central Normal, Boys High, Just Zilch, Flower Shop, Troy Howard, Suzuki, Piano, the Chiropractors, Boys High, Cody Health, Trenton, Rixon, and of course all the businesses around the Rangitikei Street intersection with the trials. There are some businesses that where there hasn't been a major change. So, for example, outside McDonald's, Countdown Mitre 10, nothing's really changed since the last time. And there are also some businesses where we've spoken to where there's no change, and actually we're going to be able to give them good news because what they wanted early on, we've been able to give them in the design. So an example of that is outside J-Car, so opposite Countdown, there's parking there at the moment, and they identified that as a really big concern because there's a number of crashes, because there's bad visibility lines. So that's something we've actually been able to work into the design. In terms of Troy Howard and also Suzuki, we've been talking to them a bit because there's also a bus stop around that location, and so we've got a plan now where they can retain their parking, and there will be a bus stop, but we're just having a further discussion about whether it has a shelter or not outside one of them. There is going to be a change in ownership of one of the businesses in that area, which one of them is involved in, which we've also been able to help build into the design as well.
Okay, thank you, that's good. All right, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team. Number of questions, which probably comes as no surprise. I asked this question at the last session. I'm going to ask it again in case we've got an answer now. Of the cycle accidents that have taken place on that road over the last 10 years, specifically the 3 fatal or serious crashes, what analysis has been done to determine if the proposed cycleway would have prevented them?
Sorry, I missed the last part of that question.
Have we done any analysis of whether or not this design would have prevented the accidents that have occurred on that road, particularly the 3 serious or fatal accidents?
We have not looked or analysed those accidents and absolutely, but specific to those crashes, no, we haven't looked at whether the current design would have prevented those deaths or serious injuries. However, we have carried out a safe system audit for the design, which has also been peer-reviewed and looked at by Wakatahi. So that has looked at how the current design will prevent future crashes and serious injuries, yes.
So those crashes, aren't they the problem we're trying to fix? We haven't determined whether or not this would have actually stopped them from happening? Okay. What percentage of peak time occupancy will this design serve? I know at the last session I think it was 37%. What is it now?
Peak occupancy of
Car parks.
Of car parks. So there aren't any changes to the number of car parks since the briefing on the 13th of September.
So it'll still only service 37%, as you all feel?
I haven't got a percentage. I've just got the total number of car parks that are in the design.
Okay. We were told at the last session in reassurance regarding parking occupancy numbers that there would be, quote, constant parking evaluations and pedestrian and biking usage on the road evaluation. Could you please give us the results of those evaluations that were promised?
So we do have some pedestrians and cycling counts that we carried out in late August. I'll just hand you over to the project manager.
Thank you.
Susan Calkin, Project Manager for Featherston Street Cycleway. So we've done cycle, pedestrian and e-scooter counts along with parking utilisation. We chose 6 locations for these counts. Ebony Coffee, the fruit shop just along from Suzuki, Annie's Takeaway, the flower shop, Merlin's Dairy, between Merlin's Dairy and the hairdresser, and Morkin Mindy's, which is the takeaway shop down by Girardum Crescent. We did this over 6 days, and we did from 7 a.m. in the morning till 9, and then again from 3 till 6 in the evening. So just a brief summary per location. Ebony Coffee had 265 cyclists travelling in either direction over those 6 days. The fruit shop had 537 cyclists, and Annie's had 247. Just averaging those, it was 316 cyclists over 6 days if you individually looked at each location. With the pedestrians, we were up to like 10,000 outside Ebony Coffee, 5,000 outside Boys High, 1,200 along Annie's, the flower shop 957, and 800 along Merlin's Dairy. Morkin Mindy's, I will note, we only counted over 3 days, not 6, because we didn't have enough staff to man the counts. Scooters, so the pedestrians was an average of 1,928 over the 6 days per location. Noting that that same cyclist or pedestrian might have walked the entire route of Featherston, so that's why I'm saying per location. E-scooters, we had e-scooters. We had outside Ebony Coffee, we had 41, we had 87 outside the fruit shop, 74 outside Annie's, 52 outside the flower shop, 65 outside Merlin's Dairy, and 42 outside Morecambe Mindy's, with an average per location of 74.6 e-scooters. On that week that we did do the counts, we had average temperatures of 6 to 10 degrees or 7 to 12 degrees, and we had a mix of rain in the morning or rain in the evening and quite torrential in some of those parts. So quite cold. And that was done, those counts were done from the 14th of August through to the 19th of August.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And so just for my understanding of the 316 average over 6 days, so that's around 52 a day, is that?
Yep, so for example, at Ebony
For cyclists.
Coffee, so it varied each day. So he had 21 day, he had another 21 another day. That's one direction, and another direction on the same time, so 26. So about 50, where are we? About 40 to 50 each time slot.
Cool.
Yeah.
In terms of the constant parking evaluation that was going to happen, do you have the results of those on you as well?
The parking utilisation.
Yes.
So what we did is we looked at the same locations, and we chose those locations because they were key locations around businesses that we were talking to at the time. And so I haven't brought the parking utilisation with me today because those businesses have all been resolved as far as parking goes.
Okay.
Bar obviously Ebony, which we just with Ebony. Sorry. So there is actually, we have done some time limited spaces on the side streets to improve his. So we've now got P60s on Lombard to help the situation.
Thank you very much. Following on a different question, similar to the Mayor's one around Pascal, why is the right-hand turn median being removed from Aroha Street, given we're wanting that to become the pick-up and drop-off zone for Central Normal School? It seems counterintuitive to then remove the right-hand turn bay to that road that we're encouraging people to use for pick-up and drop-off.
The provision that we've got with the new design enables students to be dropped off on either the eastern or western approach. So the side streets like Lombard Lombard Street's a good example, or Campbell, or any of the streets on the south side of Featherston could be used for drop-off, and the improved provision for students to cross the road means that parents could be confident that it's safe for them to do so, rather than necessarily feeling that they have to go into Aroha to drop off their child. So it makes additional provision. The positioning of the pedestrian crossing takes up a lot of space that might otherwise be there for a median strip if that was ever going to be there.
Okay. And my last question, could you talk me through your method of collecting phase signal data, given it doesn't the data you've presented to us doesn't seem to line up with the public commentary that many of us have received and is in this report. It says in particular, you say that there's only been a small increase in phase signal wait times, but the vast majority of comments talk about there being a significant increase in wait times. I was just wondering what methodology you use to collect that data.
I might ask Susan to respond to that because she's more closely associated with the data there.
So with the trials, we were in constant contact with Waka, Katahi and Tok, so we had a live communication going with them, so we could just ring up and say, the queuing is, the queuing is extending, can you please alter the phase time, which we did several times. So Rangatiki had priority over Featherston to start with, and to ease the queues in the Featherston Street direction, we changed the priority to Featherston over Rangatiki, so changing it to 50 seconds from 39. But as far as the queue lengths go and the data there, we drove it. So we had someone driving the whole time at peak times and in between times. So we would drive, find the end of the queue, hop on the end of queue, note where we joined the queue, and then when we got to either Nada Street or Tanui Street, we would count the number of phases that it took us. And we did that post and during the trial.
And so what would your observation be for the comments we have with people saying they were waiting, 5 or 6 phases? They're just an outlier rather than the norm.
No, we found that from Ngata to Tanui you could only wait 3 phases, or just over 3 phases, and that while we were there we also looked at the effects on Rangatiki Street, so we also looked at what queuing lengths that would have up there with less than minor effects. But yeah, no, we didn't witness anything like that. People might have been frustrated further back, but we found there was only 25 metres difference between post and pre. And we also did counts in February, which counted differently. So they counted the number of people in each lane, so the left, the straight and the right. And then those number of cars was then averaged out to give a length, and that gave the same results. But with that, it didn't take into account the length of a truck, for example, and it would have assumed that was a car. So from those results, you could assume that the length was actually longer of the queue.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions left on my list. Primarily around some material that was in the supporting paperwork at the workshop we didn't really get to traverse, which was around the different surface treatments and kind of potential for renewal of that roading corridor, and just wondered what the officers' plans are and if there's any optionality around those plans.
We currently don't have any budget provision to be doing resealing at the moment. That being said, we do have some options that we're exploring with Wakatahi around some additional funding, and that could come in a number of forms. It could be as simple as sealing actually in the new cycleways, leaving the centre of the road to be done at a later date, amongst other options as well. So we're sort of in the process of exploring them at present, but currently, as of right now, we don't have sufficient budget to be doing a reseal of Featherston.
Great, thank you. So that's principally a budget issue rather than a deliverability issue.
There are some considerations that would need to be taken into account around that. The resealing potentially wouldn't be directly lined up to the same timeline as, in some ways, to transport choices and the likes, which is quite a definitive timeline. That being said, we've had conversations on a number of occasions, especially around annual budget time, around taking a deliverability lens and making sure if we are going to get extra funding that we can actually deliver on what needs to be done. So that is definitely needs to be a consideration through that process, whatever we agree to. When I talk about options earlier, that could be done in a staged approach. There's a few other things we can be considering, but definitely the last thing we'd want to do is commit to something and not be able to deliver it.
Thank you. My other question is just, could you remind us of the total sum of funding that this is attracting from Wakatahi?
So there are three packages. So we have the Streets for People funding, which is 1.875, and then we have Transport Choices funding, which is split over. Well, it's covering both Featherston Street and Summerhill is 4.86. But in addition, we also have the third tranche, which is specific to the bus stops, and a portion of that will be going on Featherston and Summerhill, which is 5.5 million.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through the Mayor, I just want to add to your question about resealing, Councillor, and just ask officers to think about our forward program that we might have in that area over the next few years. I would hate for us to put all of this infrastructure in, and in then 2 years' time, when we do have a budget to do resealing, that we're having to take things out and then put it back in again. So I'll ask the team to just have a think about when that program is, and if we need to bring something back into the chamber around that, I think it would be useful.
Great, thank you to Chair Ansi.
Okay, online, Councillor Dennison.
My first question was back with your line of questioning around the turning into Pascal Street. And in your introductory comments, you made mention that you'd moved the crossing outside the dairy to the other block. Can I understand which way that's moved towards as a variation from our order paper pictures? And can that therefore not allow a right-hand turning bay into Pascal Street?
Apologies, maybe I wasn't clear. We haven't moved the crossing, we've moved the bus stop. So the bus stop is moving further west of, so it was in front of Merlin's Dairy, and we have moved it to the adjacent block, but the pedestrian crossing remains the same.
Okay. These figures that Councillor Barrett, you responded to around the budget from Waka Kotahi, could those budgets be redirected so they are utilised, but maybe not for Featherston Street, but we could use them for other streets that we might want to implement our cycling plan?
I think I could be accurately speak on behalf of Wakatahi to say no. The work we've been doing with Wakatahi to secure these funds has been initiated last year and was confirmed earlier this year when the paper was brought to council confirming Featherston Street and Summerhill as the streets that we were going to implement the cycleway. So that has been the signed agreement that we've got with Wakatahi in terms of spending this money.
And I understand from previous presentations that we have to utilise that this financial year. Is that correct? It can't be deferred?
We are working to a timetable to complete the work by June next year, and we are submitting the material, including the designs, to Wakatahi on Friday. There has been an option presented by the ministry through Wakatahi as of late last Friday, which is open to all councils as part of this program, to spread the investment that they've got from Wakatahi through into the 24-25 financial year, and that's intended to support some councils across the country who are struggling to deliver. But Palmerston North City Council is not one of those councils that Wakatahi is looking to change the timetable with. It's also, we've also working to the fact that the Streets for People program funding, which is the central part of Featherston Street between Aotearoa and North, that timeline for that tranche of funding is unchanged, and that has to be that will be completed by June next year. So we are still working to the original timetable of completing both the Streets for People and Transport Choices work on Featherston Street by June 24.
Okay, thank you. In addition to the Waka Kotahi money, can you just remind us how much money the city are putting into the Featherston Street project? So
for the agreement with Streets for People between Aotearoa and North is that we are putting in 10%, and Wakatahi is putting in 90%. Transport Choices is there isn't a required co-contribution from council. That's just 100% funding. However, we are providing, I guess, our in-kind contribution through officer time, project management, and the like. So throughout, and communications and engagement.
Okay, thank you. With the cycle counts, those current monitoring, appreciating that some of them might have doubled up as cyclists went past various points each day, can I understand what the anticipated numbers of cyclists are modelled at after this project down Featherston Street is completed?
We haven't defined a target number of numbers of cyclists on Featherston Street. I guess the target that we've been looking at has been the target for I get mode shift across the city, so that's. Sorry, was there a?
No, that's all right. I've
Okay,
just,
yeah.
just trying to
So
split
it's just
also
really we've only been looking at a percentage of mode shift to active modes across the city, which is part of as per our transport plan, but we haven't set a particular number for Featherston Street or Summerhill for numbers of movements.
Okay, and just finally, Mr. Mayor, just with regards to those streets, which there's a number of them that don't have a right-hand turning bay, I take it from the trial, because there's been no opportunity to monitor the effect of having cars stopping in the carriageway, waiting to turn right on the speed or the flow of traffic. But yet, I'd imagine there's been other examples in other cities that's done. I'm sure we're not the guinea pig. Can I understand what response has been to that stop-start on a main arterial?
Sorry, just to clarify, are you talking specifically around the Rangatike intersection?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about down the main roads, like Pascal Street, we've identified doesn't have a right-hand queuing bay. And I've noted streets like North Street, Aroha Street, Roy Street, Seddon Street, Tainui Street don't have right-hand queuing opportunities. And so if a car has to wait to turn across the traffic, what I can see is that cars are going to be parked up behind, a bit like the bus stops, waiting for traffic to get the free turn, slowing the movement of the traffic down the main arterial. Does that make sense? I understand that we won't be the guinea pig that's created this model before. There must be other cities that have put in treatments like that. I want to understand what we're comparing that effect to.
Just a comment, with a lot of the right-hand bays, they were taken away to allow parking, but where we've been able to leave a small medium strip, we have around businesses that we felt have required one.
Okay, but what about the effect with turning into streets?
We haven't modelled specifically the effect of removal of right-hand turn or median strips at intersections that might currently allow for a moving vehicle to pass a right-hand turning vehicle that might be waiting for the opportunity to cross. We haven't modelled that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions, and the first one follows on from the Mayor and Councillor Denison's question around the right-hand turning lane. Specifically, just looking at that one that has proposed to be taken out, turning into Pascal Street on the top of page 15 of our papers. In response to the Mayor's question, you said the reason that the right-hand turning lane hadn't been included in there was because of the pedestrian crossing that's there. I think that's what the answer was. And I'm looking at that white triangle that's in the middle of the road that peaks out to a peak where there's no turning lane. It appears to me that there is space for a turning lane, but it just isn't painted on the road. What would you anticipate that cars, using that as an example, cars turning right into Pascal Street, would you anticipate that they would use that space and go into the middle of the road anyway, or would you anticipate that they would just stop in the traffic, the main road part, with cars banked up behind them if they're waiting, if there's oncoming cars coming towards them so they can't turn into Pascal Street? What's your expectation about what they might, or what they would do, where they would wait?
So the second scenario where they would be stopping in the live lane and waiting for a safe opportunity to turn right, that's the expectation.
Okay, so is there a rule that prevents you putting a turning lane in there because of the pedestrian crossing, or is it best practice, or what's your reason? What's the rationale for not having it there? I mean, you gave your reason as being because of the pedestrian. Does it a right turning lane need to be a certain distance from a pedestrian crossing? And if so, was there any consideration about moving the pedestrian further down to allow that right turning lane?
Yeah, Commissioner, did you want to comment on it? There is rules around a right turn bay and the length of stacking that you can have. So obviously the pedestrian crossing, it won't make the number of cars, if you do a calculation per speed, and the number of cars you need to sit in that bay there. But we have just been talking about it with Waka Kotahi while the conversation's been going on, and there possibly is...
Susan, can you just pull that microphone?
Sorry.
We're struggling to hear you. Thanks.
Just to start again, so there is rules around right turn bays and the number of cars that you can have, the stacking order going back. So just looking at it, potentially the pedestrian crossing will be in that stacking queue there. We were just talking about it with Waka Kotahi just before, and there possibly might be space to fit a right turn bay in there, but Mersha will be able to comment better than what I can.
Hi, Mersha from WSB, project manager for the design team. So the reasoning behind removal of the right turn bays were side roads with less than 3,000 vehicles per day were the ones that we were willing to let go of. Higher than that obviously becomes a problem, and we have to have right turn bays, therefore we've got some in place, some not. It is very clear to me that there is space here for a right turn bay. There's absolutely no rule that says you cannot paint the markings there. So there's definitely something we can look into. It's an incredibly minor change, and it's very likely something that we would have picked up in any case. It would not change the behaviour of the driver at all.
Thank you for that. When you say it wouldn't change the behaviour of the driver, if there was a right turn lane, the driver would go into that lane rather than being in the middle of the driving road, though, wouldn't they?
Correct. Sorry, what I mean is, if the paint markings aren't there, the driver will have the same behaviour, steering to the right, waiting and turning. If the paint markings are there, they would do the same, staying on the paint markings, waiting to turn right. They would in both cases be stopped. So.
Okay, however, the officer just answered my question when I said, what would you anticipate a car do? I thought that the officer said that they would just stop in the middle of the carriageway and that cars would wait behind them as opposed to moving into the middle of the road. Did I understand that incorrectly, or?
Sorry, Michael, I understood what we were saying is that, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, is that the driver will stop I think the terminology got mixed up when you say in the middle of the road. In this case, it would be in the middle of the road because there are no paint markings, but you would still veer to the right. Is that correct in what you were saying?
Okay, perhaps I'll just move on to my second question, which is a little bit related also. In terms of next steps on page 11, these designs are submitted to Waka Kotahi, and then the 5.2, it talks about... so I guess my question is, what further changes can be made post today, if there are improvements that can be made that have been identified either by Council or Waka Kotahi? Are we understanding that endorsing this today still allows for some improvements or changes? Or that's my question.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So any changes minor modifications that might come out of today's meeting will be discussed and worked through with the design engineers at WSP, and with a view to finalising the designs either by close of business or tomorrow. We are submitting the designs to Waka Kotahi on Friday. Waka Kotahi may also come back with some further improvements or minor changes, although they have seen the designs through the different iterations through this process as well. So there is opportunity for some minor changes between now and when we produce construction drawings and go out to tender, yes.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, an example such as perhaps the need for some right turning lanes where they don't currently exist on the proposed designs, would that be included as feedback that you'll take from today, or does that need to be given in specific instructions from councillors?
No, we'll take that feedback today. Yep.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks for your designs and reporting. Couple of questions. One is, there was quite a lot of commentary in the public feedback on the trials about people thinking that we should stop right turns into and out of McDonald's. But that isn't included, as far as I can tell, in the final design. So can you just talk about the thinking behind that?
So picking up on the I guess the briefing conversation that we had on the 13th of September, the trial that's currently underway with the clearways in front of Mitre 10 and McDonald's and also Nata Street don't materially affect the design of the cycleway, but it did clearly come up through the co-design process as an area of concern for both the businesses and other members of the public. So the intention is that we'll maintain the clearways for the foreseeable future because since they have been installed in August, there haven't been any consequential crashes or issues that we are aware of. So we think there's merit in just maintaining these as they are for a number of months and then measure and report back to council at a later time with the results of that and a determination with potentially a proposition that they are either retained or replaced with, for example, a raised median strip down the centre which would prevent the right turns in and out. But because they don't materially affect the design of the cycleway, we don't believe that there's a necessity to make a call on that now.
Oh, okay, that's very helpful, thank you. And in terms of how this piece of work fits into the overall urban cycleway master plan, can you just remind us how this bit fits in?
Within our network operating plan, Featherston Street is a key public transport and cycleway route as part of the network. I guess it's part of that core network that provides the east-west, north-south connections that will ultimately join up with Botanical Road, Albert Street, Ruahine, and connecting obviously with Main Street and Park Road. So it's just part of that key, that core network that we're building up those connections. In and of itself, Featherston Street won't provide all the connections that are necessary, but it's just a very key east-west part to the network.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, which I guess has probably got a couple of parts. When Collins Street became cycle lanes left and right, consequence of that was losing parking, which then had to come to this room to approve $450,000 plus to create in grass verge parking bays. Has that been, obviously Featherston Street's got quite wide footpaths. Was that looked at creating in footpath parking bays in this process? And if it wasn't, is there any sort of projected costs? Obviously Featherston's a lot longer street, and it was just a small section of College which had that.
Councillor, maybe we let him answer the first part. It sounds like a long question. Answer the first part and come back to you on the second part.
Thank you.
Yep.
We did not look at indented car park bays as part of this project. It was out of scope, and certainly out of scope from Wakatahi's prospective transport choices and Streets for People funding, which is specifically to look at mode shift and support improvements for walking and cycling and public transport. So there certainly it wasn't within scope, and it wasn't also within budget to be able to provide indented parking along Featherston Street or Summerhill. And through the work that we've done with the businesses, we've managed to achieve parking for the businesses so that they'll be able to have at least the bare minimum or the status quo for them to operate. But unlike College Street, the proposition isn't to provide indented parking for residents along Featherston Street, no.
I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much, officers and consultants. Two questions around next steps, and perhaps the first question is to the Chief Executive. What does it look like if Council decides not to endorse the detailed design today?
Through Mr Mayor, was a potential that timeframes will run out and we'll won't receive the funding to undertake this project. If council then decided to do it at some point in the future, it'll be at our cost.
Wonderful. And just a second question, if council does decide to endorse the recommendations today, 5.2 and next steps, page 11, what does continue to work through the final design look like for us?
So we'll continue to work through the designs in the over the next 24, 48 hours before we submit the designs through to Wakatahi, and if they provide any changes, we'll continue to make any tweaks to that Wakatahi might require of us. And then we go through to developing construction-ready designs ahead of going out to tender for procurement.
Can I just clarify then that beyond this Friday, there won't be an opportunity to make changes to the design?
We are not proposing to bring back to council another iteration of the design. Yeah. If I've heard
Wonderful.
that correctly.
Yep. And to Mr Mayor, then it seems to me that we only have today if we're going to suggest any changes like the right-hand turning base.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Harper.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just following up on Councillor Arnott's question, has there been any evaluation on College Street's work that come back to council? Have we done an evaluation of the good, the bad and the ugly?
In context of this project, no.
Oh, in context to any roading work that the council's done?
So, from an active transport perspective, we have not done any specific cycle counts on College Street. We have been looking at some designs for the College and Cook Street intersection. So that's, I guess, the most recent piece of work that we've been doing to make improvements in that area. But in terms of vehicle counts or speeds, that's certainly not within my remit. It might have been within roading.
So can we tick it off to say it was a successful project in terms of a council project by putting cycle lanes in down a street, which is similarly what we're going to do with this project? Did it work?
I think it'd be, you're talking about benefits realisation, excuse me, and I think, well, what Michael's signalling is we haven't done any robust sort of analysis of the impact of that on a variety of fronts, and that work probably needs to be done before we could say whether the benefits at the outlook of the project were achieved or not.
So from a project management perspective, we don't evaluate projects?
No, that is a, so at the beginning of a project, we're very clear on what the benefits and outcomes we're trying to achieve, and then as part of the project management framework as well, in delivering a project, the benefits realisation piece is definitely a key step at the end of a project. As per the audits that have come through the Chamber in the past, that was an area that traditionally has not been consistently undertaken. But definitely moving forward in terms of improvements.
But when did that project finish?
When did that finish?
When did College Street finish? So we finished it. Sorry, I might ask Sue, who was project manager on that. Certainly it was, apologies, that work was largely completed before I joined council, so I'd have to defer to Sue.
Okay. I think it was 2021.
Okay.
that project was completed.
So, okay, I know it's not this responsibility of this chief executive, but if we could, we haven't done an evaluation of that project, so
You're in
it's,
comments, sorry, councillor. Maybe we leave that to comments. Okay. There's no further questions, so thank you, Michael. Thanks, Bryce. You're released. The recommendations there, councillors, are in front of us, and there's actually a third one as well. So I'll read the first two. The council endorsed the design for Featherston Street Cycleway, including the pedestrian crossings project attachment 1, and support these being submitted to NZTA for design approval, and that council note the public feedback that was received from the trials that were undertaken for various elements for the Featherston Street Cycleway project. And the third one is that the Chief Executive provide a business assurance report on the Featherston Street Cycleway and safety improvements process and engagement. So I'm happy to move those, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and I'll open up with some commentary, and I'm sure there'll be some others. Thank you to the officers and to the various team of support consultants. This is a bit of challenging work, and you can sense with some of the questioning that it's been difficult. And the public comment that we had a little bit earlier, the reason I put number 3 in there is it's evident there are some differences around the process and the engagement. And whether you believe half of it or not, I just think it's a good assurance, or actually insurance, for myself, for you as councillors, as a council's reputation, for officers, for everybody involved, that we actually document actually what did happen. Sometimes things get lost in emotional conversations, and it's evident that there has been some dialogue happen. There's evident that there well, but most of them have other options for drop-offs and pickups. Some of the dairies and alike. So I think there has been a very genuine and authentic attempt to try and look at what can be done to ensure that businesses are supported. It's just how that's happened. So I think the last bit of work is really all, perhaps it has already been done, it's just pulling it all together. And I've spoken to the CE about whether that could happen, and happen reasonably timely, because it is all going to have to be wrapped up within the coming weeks and months. So I just think that's a good bit of assurance/insurance for us as a council. Look, it's challenging. There's going to be some, let's be honest, there's going to be some congestion. We've just got to accept that. But I think the key thing is, hand on heart, you can say there's 2 high schools, there's 2 schools here, there's clubs, there's churches, and a whole lot of businesses, and it will be a safer carriageway going forward. So I just think we've got to keep that in mind, even if it takes you an extra 5 minutes to get somewhere. So somebody in Auckland, Wellington, or even Christchurch should be looking at this and going, what is the issue? But let's be honest, we just want to provide a safer carriageway. So I'm very happy to move this, and I'd encourage you to think about this in a bigger picture, rather than just the parking and some of the engagement that's been a little bit hit and miss. But by and large, I think this has actually been quite a good process. So I just want to acknowledge again the staff, because it hasn't been an easy conversation, and change is always difficult. All right, I've opened up a hornet's nest. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project design, development, the process with community has developed very well over time and deserves our fullest support. I'll give you a few of the reasons that is the case. The first is around strategic fit. When you look at the goals that our city holds around growth, around vitality, around safety, and around emissions, there's no way to achieve those goals without a strong, active transport network and mode shift and getting people active in their transport. Featherston Street is also an absolutely essential part of that transport network, a key link for people and destinations. It has been in our master plan and in our long-term plans for since 2018 and is a substantial piece that has been consulted many times at that level, acknowledging that when you get to a detailed consultation, there's more conversations to have. Fundamentally, this project is about providing choice. Currently, Featherston Street is only fit for purpose for people in cars. We need that corridor to be fit for purpose for people, whether they're on foot, whether they're in a bus, whether they're on a bike, or whether they're in a car. And this project will deliver that. It opens up accessibility, it opens up choices, and it will deliver safety improvements for everyone. Make no mistake about it, cycleways save lives, pedestrian facilities save lives, and I want to make sure that we're a city that is well prioritizing people's safety as they move about our city. There's also a very nice equity fit here. If you're on this side of Main Street, you've got east-west options along the river, you've got east-west options along College Street, you've got east-west options along Church Street. Quite a bit of Main Street is either improved or in line for improvement. Once you get to the other side of the city, it is actually markedly more dangerous to be on foot. It is markedly more dangerous to be on a bicycle. There is a very strong fairness and equity lens across this as well. I see this project as very well setting the standard in terms of both design and process. The co-design process that we went through with the community was comprehensive, and I'd like to add my voice to the mayors of acknowledging the staff and the consultants that went on that very substantial journey. Yes, change is tough. Yes, there's going to be some effects around congestion. There's going to be some need for people to do some adaptation here. But growth comes with growing pains, and this is what we need to grow through as a city. It is absolutely essential that we are prioritizing movement on busy streets over the storage of cars on those same streets. And fundamentally, this project is about getting people moving and having choice in how they move in those modes. I'd also say it's quite risky to contemplate a no vote. So the funders here are funding partners on the thick end of about $1 billion worth of investment. You think about Te Ahuataranga, you think about Pinati, you think about the ongoing co-investment in transport in this city. And I would say that at this late stage in the project, to be trying to kneecap this project with a no vote is most risky, unwise, and even foolish. There's a very clear benefits case around here, and this design and this project gives us the right balance, gives us the best of all worlds, and I'd urge you to give it the fullest support. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I'll just pick up on perhaps just a little bit of history to the Urban Cycle Network Master Plan. And before that, we just need to think about what a network is. And a network is it's a collection of feeder, collector and arterial routes for us to move around our communities. The Urban Cycle Network Master Plan was actually approved by the Planning and Strategy Committee on 2 September 2019, and the vote was unanimous. Those recommendations went to Council on the 23rd of September, and again was passed 15 votes to none. And that master plan included Featherston Street, and it included a buffered cycleway, which is what we have here before us today. This project has already been through a safe system audit, and that means it is safer for vehicles, motorcycles and pedestrians, all users. And to give you an example of cycle safety, and this is our personal experience and it happens every day, if I say, for example, ride down Albert Street, which does not have a cycleway, if I have a car parked on the left-hand side of the road, I have to ride at least a metre to the right of that vehicle. And that's to avoid being car-doored. Cars constantly overtake the cyclist and sometimes actually encroach on the opposing traffic because they think that passing a cycle is just what you do. If you have a buffered cycle lane, then you create safety. That car-dooring example I gave to you just before led to a fatality that happened in this city. And there is not just one victim, there are 3 victims. There is the person who opened the door, there is the car that ran over the cyclist, and there is the dead cyclist and their family. So the crucial nature of this decision has to be really well thought through today. Council officers have gone through a very, very thorough process in this. They've held workshops, they've had direct consultation with businesses, they have continued liaison with businesses, and they've done so in good faith. They've run trials, light phasing, turning options, and the impacts of bus stops. All of that work has been done. Retrofitting cycleways and other forms of transport into cities is a global issue. It's happened every city around the world. Why? Because we face issues in terms of becoming sustainable. It's not easy and change is difficult. Failing to approve this today, it completely undermines the Cycle Network Master Plan because it takes out a very substantial component of that master plan. Failing to actually approve this today would demonstrate a lack of vision, a lack of courage in terms of making a road safer, reducing risks and casualties, and reducing emissions. We can either choose to lead in this, or we can follow into the natural consequences of failing to act. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those are my comments.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start by quoting a member of the public on what will happen if we approve this plan here today. It will be an absolute disaster and the idea needs to be scrapped. Why do I not support this? Because this will be less safe for motorists and pedestrians trying to use this road. I don't care what a Wakakatahi algorithm in Auckland says. When you tell me you've got programs which do not take into account a pedestrian using the median to safely cross a road, I don't trust your algorithms. I'm sorry, I care about people who are using that road every single day, not what a computer in Auckland tells me is safe. And what we know from feedback from the public is the removal of this median will be considerably less safe for motorists using the road as well as pedestrians using the road. I took the liberty to go through the plan. So there are currently 31 side streets off Featherston. 21 of them, which currently have a right-hand turn bay, will no longer have a right-hand turn bay. Birmingham, Kingswood, Lyndhurst, Bryant, Seddon, Pascal, Karamu, Corfai, the list goes on. You will have to stop in the middle of a lane of live traffic to make a right-hand turn. You cannot tell me that will not cause accidents. You cannot tell me there will not be a severe consequence as a result of this decision. Pedestrian crossings are good, and in those 5 locations where there are crossings immediately opposite, that will be safe for pedestrians, absolutely. But what if your goal's on the other side of the road and the pedestrian crossing's 5 metres down? Well, you'll probably walk 5 metres, cross and come back. What if it's 10? What if it's 20? What if it's 30? How far are people going to walk to use pedestrian crossings? I guarantee I've seen at Boys High, people going out of Sphere Centre won't walk 10 metres down the road to use the pedestrian crossing there, they'll just duck across the traffic. But at least currently, people have a medium which they can use to stop in to get through that traffic. So we will see motor vehicle accidents and we will see pedestrian accidents as a result of this plan, and I don't care what your flawed algorithm says to the otherwise. There's been no analysis if this would have prevented the accidents that we're trying to prevent, and you would think that would be the first thing you would do when developing a solution to a problem is say, would this have fixed the problem that we're trying to face? Despite the fact I asked this months ago, no analysis has been done of whether this would have stopped those 3 serious or fatal accidents from occurring. No evaluation's been done of College Street, and I can tell you why. If College Street, if that work had seen a significant increase in cyclists, we would be being told that constantly. We would be being told we put a cycleway in and there was a 150% increase in cyclists. The reason we're not being told is because there hasn't been the increase it was purported to be. Why has there not been an increase? Councillors often talk about this perception of safety. The community views our cycle network as unsafe and that's why they don't use it. There's an interesting figure in our resident survey, I don't know if you read it. Palmerston North is great for cycling. 16% strongly agreed, 46% agreed, 25% neither agreed nor disagreed. So they didn't think we were bad for cycling, didn't think that we were great either. So 87% of our city thinks that we are between okay and really great for cycling. Only 2% strongly disagreed. Only 10% disagreed. So we are talking about the vast majority of our city who view us as safe for cycling because we're flat, we've got wide roads, we've got, well, a number of reasons. And so, will this see an increase in cyclists purported to see? No, it won't. This plan will see a loss of parking for businesses, pick-up and drop-off zones, and for residential properties, not just businesses. We have a large number of subdivided residential properties on Featherston Street which have limited on-site parking. We're only going to be able to service 37% of peak time demand based off statistics which I've already expressed I feel are favourable towards this plan. The alternative to this, because all of the councillors I've spoken to who are leaning against voting for this, don't believe that we just shouldn't have a cycleway down Featherston Street. Everybody agrees that there is work to do, but it has been a narrow-minded obsession with doing a separated cycleway at all costs of other safety for other modes of transport, at all costs of usability of the road that has left us in this position. So if this fails today, I would encourage us to look at looking at a non-separated cycleway option where we may be able to retain the median, we may be able to retain the left and the straight-through lanes, and not go with a plan which has narrowly obsessed over one option at all costs. So there is an alternative. In terms of open-mindedness, there's a number of councillors here who have taken the view that they will vote for a cycleway no matter what. I do have a timer on. I've kept myself in time, hopefully. If you read those comments, I don't know how any councillor here could vote for this in good conscience. The community has described this as a disaster, terrible, a nightmare. Somebody even went as far as to say it's like the person who did this layout has never driven the road before. And I would say that's potentially true. So councillors, I will not swallow a dead rat just because Waka Kotahi is giving me $5 million to do so. And I don't think the majority of councillors here will either. This can fail. There are a number of us who are not in support of this plan. And I urge you, I need your votes. I need your vote, Councillor Dennison. I need your vote, Councillor Naylor, Councillor Mickelid. Mr Mayor, I need you to change your vote. We can stop this today.
Time's up, Councillor.
We don't have to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Zabellin, you got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I will speak quickly. So, like Councillor Wood, I'd also like to start by referencing some of the feedback that we received that's on page 17. It says there should be a solution that keeps cyclists safe without impeding on the efficiency of drivers that make up the majority of the city. But actually, there isn't one. If there was one, that's what we would be debating. What we're doing is weighing up or trading off between driver efficiency and all the other types of road users. Because if there was, a win-win solution, that's what we'd be debating. Talking safety, as Councillor Wood pointed out, there's a major theme coming through that feedback from the trial period, is that a concern that frustrated drivers will make dangerous, risky decisions. The fact that this intersection is already congested, that it's already unsafe, and that risky driver behaviour already occurs there, I think just actually emphasises the real importance that we do put safety in this, especially we're a growing city that's likely to get worse anyway. I particularly think that Just Zilch has come out of this worst off out of anyone. I feel that the parking arrangements that are listed in that table, page 28, they're not at all adequate, specifically because they're referred to parks that are around the corner on Rangitike Street, which are likely to already be well subscribed, and they are sort of attributed to being used by the businesses that are in that table above. That line with Just Zilch in it. So I think that we have a really big grass strip right outside the Just Zilch area, and we know that's out of scope, but I think that we've really missed an opportunity there, and we're going to use that for playful elements when there is a business that, social service that is going to be detrimentally affected by that. Finally,
I have taken a lot of pains to be involved in this process, and I have witnessed firsthand the very earnest and extensive effort that our officers have gone to meaningfully engage on this undertaking. So criticisms that have been aired in past meetings and from our public comment that this process was a meaningless gesture with foregone conclusions is just so ironic, considering I feel this has been the most high contact and out-of-the-box engagement that we've actually done. What's foregone is that we're getting a cycleway, because we know that Featherston Street is number 1 in the Urban Cycle Network Master Plan. So that we've known that for ages. The design is not foregone, and that's the point of co-design. Not working with unlimited options, you're working with 3 options at best in most of these situations, and we're not reinventing roading and roading treatments, you know. We're figuring out where to put things. We're not magicking away congestion. We've got the expertise on one hand of qualified, experienced people who do this as a job, and the direct input of over 100 people, and many, many more on social media. To me, that's robust, evidential process and a sound basis. In fact, throwing the co-design recommendations out because you don't like them or you don't agree with them is actually what makes that process meaningless. Because what message does that send to the people who came and gave 12 hours of their time to meaningfully engage with us? If it gets to this point and we go, no, I don't like it, don't really agree, don't vote for it. What does that say about our good faith in coming to that process? I don't like what it says about that. I'll absolutely challenge any inference that our officers' co-design process was anything like tokenism or foregone solutions. I think a lot of members didn't even attend those sessions, so how can you actually say? The fact is, this is a priority route. It's been identified in the Urban Cycleways Master Plan for years now. It should be no surprise to anybody that this high kid straight environment was going to be a difficult job whenever we undertook it. It's the fact that there is a timeline in play, and that our officers have gone to extensive, concerted lengths to be as accommodating as possible, to as many parties as possible, with as many mechanisms as possible, within the many, many, many restraints of this street. We're getting it for free. We're achieving our own strategic goals on someone else's dollar. It will be demonstrably more safe for more types of road users across more of our community, across more of the road. So I want to be part of the council who, when we're offered the chance and the money to make this safer for as many types of road users as possible, we said yes and thank you, and not just, no, I don't like bits of it, so it's rubbish. Thank you.
Just completed under 5 minutes. Councillor Naylor, please don't use 5 minutes as a target.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm not councillor.
Oh, sorry, Councillor McCallum.
You want him to speak?
My apologies, I pushed the wrong buttons.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to us. And I want to thank also the officers and the consultants also for the report, and also for the genuine attempt to take into consideration some of the concerns that were raised by the business community when the first iteration came in. And I think I was one of the few councillors to actually attend the sessions held at the convention centre, and I've had the opportunity to hear the concerns of the community, and I had concerns as well. I was a cyclist, I went to Freiburg High School, and I remember I was hit by a car while cycling to school. And this is quite personal to me as well, it's around safety. And initially, I did not want to vote in favour of this. Not because I believe that we do not need safer cycle lanes, not because I believe that we shouldn't promote road safety, but the reason why I wanted to vote against this was around the design. Do I agree with the design? Not entirely. Do I believe that we should actually have safer roads that's inclusive of all road users? Yes, I do. But the design, in my opinion, is poor. I lived in Wellington for 5 years. And Wellington, and especially Arrow Valley, which has the highest uptake of cyclists in the country. And I've seen the experience in Wellington that you can have cycle lanes without the need of compromising parking for businesses. And they can actually go in hand. And I think the concern for me with this design was the amount of car park being lost, and which will be also affecting, I think, a lot of businesses on that stretch of road. And not only businesses, but a lot of homeowners as well, who will probably have family members coming to visit them during, let's say, Christmas or special events, and cannot park in front of the housing, and we have to park 30 meters down the road, personally. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that, we've had a lot of crashes on this road, 442 crashes in the last 10 years that are only reported, and I believe that there are more that have been unreported as well on that stretch of road. And we've had 2 fatalities. And on top of that as well, we're having money from Waka Kotahi, which will kind of help also alleviate the financial burden on council to have to fund this in the future if we do not actually go forward. So I came in against this, against with the idea of not voting for this, but having heard some of the questions, some of the answers also given by officers, and also taking into consideration pedestrian and cyclist safety in mind, I'm going to change my vote and actually vote in favor of this. And do I agree with the design? No. But if we're voting entirely on the design, I'll be throwing it out, in a rubbish bin or something. But I'll be doing this just because I believe that we should have a road network that is safe for all users, be it on a cycle, whether you're a cyclist, whether you're, a motorist, or whether you're on a scooter or skateboard, whatever the mode of transportation might be. But I'm only doing this with a grain of salt, and safety is actually paramount, and I'm going to overturn my vote and vote in favor of this. But I'm not entirely pleased with the design, and I think we could do better. I'll leave it at that.
Sorry, Councillor Naylor now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise in support all 3 of these recommendations, and I'm really happy to do so. Certainly, there is no, I do not feel like I am swallowing a dead rat. I feel that this is a positive step for us to progress our goals that I supported this in 2019, and now in 2023, I'm even more convinced that this is a sensible, safe path for us to be on as a council. It aligns with our goals. We don't have goals to increase driver efficiency or driver speed in our city. We do have goals to have an environmentally friendly city, to have improved active transport in our city, and to have a safer city. I've had the opportunity recently, as many of you are aware, to actually observe and experience a few other cities who do have very good cycling networks. And it's been a real pleasure to ride across very busy cities on a busy night, feeling incredibly safe. About 80% of those cycle pathways were separated cycle pathways. Cities, for example, in Holland, where they've done this well, to go and experience it is a completely different thing to theoretically reading the papers that we have been presented. Although I agreed with it then, I even more so agree with it now. So I do acknowledge this is not easy for everyone, and there are views in the community that if someone isn't parking outside my business, then my business is going to suffer. The evidence around the world does not support that view. And we've heard from experts, and we've heard from others from other cities who have come and presented here that actually the opposite of that is correct. And that may well take some time for our businesses to actually believe that reality and understand that reality. And not every step of this process is going to be easy, but I do really want to, I'm very supportive of this. And I do want to also acknowledge our staff who I think have worked incredibly hard to engage constructively with our community and have worked hard to progress this on a tight timeline. There are a few things as a layperson that I think could be improved, such as the right-hand turning lanes, etc., and those have been explored. I'm confident, based on the responses from officers, that those things will be able to be tweaked in due course, so I look forward to this being implemented.
Councillor Habiter.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I agree with some of the sentiments that Councillor Mickelard said, and that he said that he didn't agree with the design. I think that the design stinks, and in saying that, I think we should go back to the drawing board, because I don't think it supports a lot of the things on Featherston Street in terms of the schools and the businesses. And in saying that, I think I won't be supporting these two recommendations because of that. And I can't do that for those businesses or for those schools, hand on heart. And my second thing is, we should have done an evaluation as a council on College Street, and we should have learned from it. And I don't know why we didn't get a report back from what happened on College Street, because many of us were councillors on council at that time. We should have got a report back, and we didn't. And we should have learnt from the mistakes that happened on College Street. We should know the number of cyclists that are going down College Street now, the number, how much we've spent now on College Street, and we should have learnt from it, and we blinking well haven't. And I'm pretty much disgusted about that. So I won't be voting for this, and I wish others wouldn't either. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I will be supporting this. I wasn't here when it first came to, the design first came to council at the end of June. But I have got extensive experience as a cyclist, and also my family cycling on Featherston Street when we lived in Mary Avenue for 11 years. And during that time, 2 of my teenagers were knocked off their bikes by cars in Featherston Street. My daughter, as she cycled to Girls' High, and my son, as he cycled home from Boys' High. And both of those accidents would have been completely prevented had my children been in separated cycleways. Now, they were lucky. They didn't sustain serious injuries. Other people's children haven't been so lucky. So I strongly support, in principle, separated cycleways. I'm no expert on how to design a road. I leave it to the experts to bring the designs to us. But I am convinced that by doing these modifications and providing a separated cycleway and providing pedestrian crossings with refuges, that we will make that street safer for cyclists and for pedestrians. And that really is what it's about for me. It's not about looking at a particular part of the street and saying, oh, I think this should be done differently or whatever. It's about looking at the whole picture and saying, are we going to, by doing these changes,
and I'm not going to mince my words with that. I stand for safety. This issue has been forced upon us to look, this has forced us to look closely at our urban transport network and to check to see if we have currency, and as such, that's progress and that's necessary. It is difficult working with what we do have. There are constraints. The size of the road, the length, the width, all the side streets and so forth. That makes it even more difficult for the designers. We've had comprehensive public workshops, surveys and/or consultation has been undertaken with a wide range of people. That's evidenced in the surveys that we have in our documentation. One cannot accommodate the needs of everyone. We must look, however, for the common good within our community. There have been compromises, as expected and as required, side road use, timing limits, etc. It's already a nightmare driving down Featherston Street. I go there every day. I teach hundreds of students who are there at Palmerston North Boys High School. And I feel for Central Normal and for Ross Intermediate and Freiburg as well. As a teacher, I just see the close shaves that those students have. Reading the comments from the public, you know, what stood out to me was how shocking our drivers are. And they need to adjust their actions. Council officers in Waka Kotahi have worked collaboratively and jointly looked at the effects of the traffic flow, for pedestrians, for cyclists, for vehicles. Thank you to the staff who've worked on this, not for days or weeks, but for months, if not years, because this is part of our urban transport network. I support all three of these recommendations. Kia ora.
Councillor Meehan online.
Am I heard all right?
We can hear you.
Good. Okay, interesting. Number of things. Growth. If we compare the growth in vehicles of cars, trucks, everything else on the roads compared to cyclists over the last 10 years, we'll find there's a whole lot more cars, trucks, and so forth on the roads than cyclists. Vision. I heard a councillor speak about we have no vision if we don't vote for this. Well, I have vision because the vision is we haven't made the right option in our design. Simply, why isn't the design taken? Sorry. Another councillor commented, every city in the world. No, every city's not. I've been to 60 plus countries in the world. And a lot of those countries actually shared pathways with cyclists and pedestrians. Get the cyclists off the road so we don't have the problem with getting run over by cars. That's the best option. We did our study over a week, our trial over a week, 1 week. This massive stretch of road in our city, we did a trial for 1 week. And we did half a trial. We took out some right turns. We didn't do the whole thing. We didn't cover the whole road. I drive that road every day when I'm in New Zealand, every day. And we didn't cover half of what we should have covered in the trial. So no shot at the council, the officers. They've done what they should have done. But the design is not right. We are not going to fix it. We're going to cause congestion. We're going to cause road rage. We're going to cause risk takers. Are our cyclists really going to be safe now? Really going to be safe? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Sorry, just checking my notes. Safer. Well, we take the gamble. Because we're going to get lots of money. So we throw the gamble in, we're going to get lots of money. So let's go it. That's what it's all about. Okay. I heard it said that it's councils that are stuck on cycleways, end of story, because they ride a bike and they're going to go that way no matter what. And that's exactly true. Couldn't have been better said. Okay. You're not going to change your view no matter what. Is it going to make it safer? I don't believe it's going to make it safer at all. Okay. The design is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. We need to go back to the drawing board, not get pushed by we're going to get some money and we've got till tomorrow to get it done, signed off, or we lose it. Okay. We need to go back to the drawing board and look at some other designs. We're affecting business. We're affecting growth. Okay. Growth. The growth is more vehicles go on the road than more cyclists. Look at the percentage of how many cars versus cyclists go on the road each day. I heard it said Boys High. The Boys High cyclists have got the best design of all. They come out in force, they take the whole road and they drive down it. Vehicles have got no option but to stop and slow down and work with them because they come out in force and they take the whole road. So they're not at risk. They're not at risk. They're smart. Those boys have got it sorted. They know how to handle it. I won't dribble on anymore, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Wood covered it off pretty clearly. This design doesn't cut it. It's not right. We need to go back to the drawing board, not be bought by a few dollars, okay, and re-look at the design and do this properly. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm crossing things out, trying not to repeat things that people have said, but I am rising in support of these recommendations. I think that you started off in the right place here of saying change is difficult. We all knew, particularly those of us who lived through College Street, we know how hard it is to retrofit a safe cycleway into the urban environment. We didn't do a great job with College Street. There are lots of things we have learnt from that, and we're seeing some of the outcome of that learning in this debate here today. I think to the last point raised by Councillor Meehan about Boys High, do we really want the only way you can cycle safely in this city is to bring 100 of your mates? Because I don't think that's a particularly viable solution. Many friends though I have, I don't think I could lure them into that one. A few years ago, we hosted the Walking and Cycling City Conference here in the city, and I remember going out on a bike ride as part of that. And the overwhelming feedback from people at that conference, a lot of local government people, but also industry, was they couldn't believe how lucky we were as a city. Lucky with our wide streets, with plenty of space to accommodate different users. Lucky with our grid system that is really easy to adapt to get those best network outcomes. And that's what we've been trying to do in this process. So yes, it's Featherston Street, taken alone, is going to be a difficult conversation. It's a congested space. It serves lots of needs for business, for schools, for residential. But it's only one part of our network. All of those streets that lead onto Featherston Street have another end that leads onto something else. And people can make choices about how they use that network. But some of our most vulnerable road users, people who choose to walk and cycle, maybe because they don't have the car option, sometimes for reasons of age or ability, those vulnerable road users who are in that Featherston Street corridor don't have network choices because they're heading to schools and work and places which are on Featherston Street. Our car users have a lot more options, and we're a city that can enable those options. And it will still only delay you by a couple of minutes. I'm just not buying this whole congestion argument. I think people will make choices. Change is difficult. It will be uncomfortable, particularly in the roadworks, which are always a nightmare. But even once we get past the roadworks, as this beds in, it will be difficult. Yes, there will be some congestion at that point while people figure this out. There may even be some unintended consequences of the risky behaviour that we historically see. But in the long term, in the bigger picture, will this be safer? Absolutely. Will it be safer for our most vulnerable? Absolutely. And that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
All right. We can't get a hold of Councillor Denison, but I'll wrap up just as a right of reply. So look, thank you, councillors. I just wanted, there's a couple of comments here. Councillor Barrett, you started it, you said, I think even for cars, this is a pretty average carriageway. You know, it's not a fantastic, even a fantastic drive. It's definitely not a fantastic ride. So, look, surely it's got to be a better carriageway if we have some separation there for cyclists, and it's got to be a better outcome for everybody. A slower Rangatike Street, Featherston Street intersection as well has got to be better for us. We must partner. I mean, we've got a partner here, and we have had a policy in the past, although it's unwritten, that we try and work with our partners where possible. I agree some of you think that we're perhaps taking some free money or easy money, but actually they are our principal transport partner, and they want to work with us. So for me personally, I think we've come into this with good faith. I don't want to be backing out at the 11th hour. Look, I'm actually quite comfortable with what I've heard today. Some of you may not be. Yes, there has been an impact to business, but as a former businessman, I do think businesses have been listened to. I'm going to make a commitment to Mr. Holmes to go and speak to him in the coming days. But look, there has been some loss of parking, but actually it's the schools that have lost most of it, and they're the ones that actually have been quite supportive. So I think we've got to be careful that this is difficult, I know, and change is hard, and I've never denied there's going to be some congestion, but really when you think about what we're dealing with, this congestion is quite small in the bigger scheme of things. Yes, it's probably going to be a bit of a challenge for Palmerstonians because they're not used to it, but if we want a safer carriageway, if we do want people to get from one end of Featherston Street to the other in all modes, then this is the way to do it. Again, I think the business assurance, that management plan will give us some transparency and some evidence of the process and the engagement, and I encourage the officers to feed into that if this is successful. If I could just make one final plea to the designers, just to have a little think about that Pascal Street right-hand turning bay for arena. I think perhaps some of those numbers were not, arena wasn't factored into that with events. But by and large, I actually don't mind the design. I know some of you don't like it, but I think the officers and the consultants have done a reasonable job considering everything they've had to weigh and balance up. So, there's going to be 8 crossings. We've had a bit of discussion about it's terrible for pedestrians. Well, actually, it's going to be better. There's only 2 at the moment. I mean, surely 8's got to be better. So, look, I get it that this debate's been difficult and change is difficult, but please, I think this is worth it, and we've got to go the extra mile. So I ask you to support this, please. Okay, we've got Councillor Dennison back on the line. I'll let you have the last word, Councillor.
I do appreciate that. It's unfortunate the technology, how it's worked out. I'm not sure the answer what happened. Appreciate your grace on this. I wanted to acknowledge too the co-design and the trials and the effort that's put in place, and even the money that's on the table. But I still think that's been a reasonable outcome for us to stand here today and say no. And if it's still a good idea next month or in a time for a review with our residents, our businesses, and tweaking some of the design, I don't want to be in a position where I feel rushed to have to say yes now. I don't think it's a great design. I think there's a lot of weaknesses in it. And I know that Councillor Wood was calling for my vote, but I tell you what, my vote's going to go to the people that have given feedback. There's a ton of feedback through the social media and through the feedback that is not positive. They've had poor experiences. They say it's dangerous, and that's just with the Queuing Bay trial. That's not taking into effect all the stopping and live traffic that's going to be generated with buses and no right-hand turns in the flow of traffic. And so one of the other feedbacks that we get from residents, sure, they want to have cycle lanes, and I'm supportive of the urban cycle plan, but one of the other criticism is they say we don't listen. They give feedback and then we don't listen, we just go and do it anyway. So my vote in opposition today is going to be for those ones that have given that feedback quite clearly, those businesses that feel like they're still being frustrated with not being heard with their actual needs around access and parking, and even the users. There's a ton of car parks. The trials have given feedback that the parking's back beyond Wood Street and even queuing down Wood Street to the west side and up past Russell Street. And that's without any of these stop pausing. We mentioned about emissions. The stop starting nature of traffic, I understood that that was actually one of the things that was that exaggerated the emissions. So for the increase in cycle numbers, which I don't even know what success would look like until we fix the whole network up, because on the current counts, I just find it hard to justify putting all this investment in, which is multi-millions of dollars, but without knowing what the cycle numbers will look like as success, and yet all the disruption. So as far as the danger, nightmarish, so many near misses. I think for safety, I don't think it's proven that. I think the public feedback primarily is where I'm putting my position. And I think it actually takes a bit of courage to say no to the size of money that's on the table. But if it's still a good idea this time next year, well, maybe we can re-engage Waka Kotahi to do an amended plan. But I'm not saying yes today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the chance to comment.
Thank you, councillor. Okay. All right, we've got the 3 recommendations in front of us. I won't go over them again. We know what they are. We can see them. I'll ask you to vote, please. And that has passed 10 votes for and 5 against. Great. All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, that brings to about our end of our meeting, and if I ask Councillor Fitzgerald to close us out. Thank you.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Mayor, a befitting karakia for the chamber that we have. Whakamaua kia tīna, ka pita ki te ao marama. Let's all go back into the world of enlightenment and understanding. Whakamaua ka tīna, hold on to hold fast. Haumie, huie, taiki.
Okay.
Amen.
Kia ora, everyone. All right. It's a good debate. Thank you.